we were supposed to, that night, there was like, there was stuff every night, events, appearances, whatever. And we were supposed to go to dinner with the owner of the company. And I remember bumping into 2 other girls in the industry that were there. They just happened to be in Tahoe. They weren't part of the golf thing. It was like, what are you, like, Stormy? Alana, what are you doing here? Oh, blah, blah, blah. And it was a girl named Alana Evans and another girl named Cindy. That I just knew her by face. And I ended up walking to a tattoo shop with them, strangely enough, because one of the girls was getting a tattoo. And I'm telling them about what was going on. And I ended up being on the phone with my publicist. And I was like, can you believe that this just happened? He asked me to go to dinner. And he was like, you should go. I was like, why would I do that? And he's like, because it would be a great story. Like, you got to have, it would be interesting. And it gets you out of going to the dinner that you don't want to go to. I was like, good point. And so I texted him and went to his hotel because he was staying in a different hotel and asked me to come up to meet him at the room. And we were going to he was going to make reservations. I wasn't. And we were going to go down and have dinner. And that's all I was told. And then, as everybody knows, I got there. You've read the book. He wasn't ready yet. I don't know if I was early or if he was late. I can't remember. And I got there and he famously greeted me in his silk pajamas, which I mocked him mercilessly, and told him to go change, which he did. His bodyguard, Keith, was at the door. He never left the door. And we ended up talking for like 3 hours. And at no point in this conversation was I solicited for sex, offered money for sex. He didn't even flirt with me. Like, it was, it pains me to this day to even admit this, but it was a pretty decent conversation, to be honest. He asked business questions like, is there unions and do you get royalty? And everybody always wants to ask the questions about STDs and how I explained that Wicked Pictures was condom mandatory. And even when I work with my real life partner, and he was telling me about the story about how he had a golf course somewhere overseas, I want to say Ireland or the UK or something like that he was fighting with environmentalists. Scotland. He was fighting with environmentalists about some plant that birds, and he was like, it's red tape everywhere. And so it was a really good conversation, to be honest. He didn't seem creepy. I was not drinking. I didn't even drink alcohol back then. That was before I started drinking. And about halfway through, he was like, you're actually really smart. I was like, you gotta love those backhanded fucking compliments. You know what I mean? You're smart for a girl. No. And that's when he famously said, do you remind me of my daughter, which has been twisted grotesquely by the press. But I'm telling you, it wasn't like that. You know what I mean? It was just like, because I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, she's beautiful and a savvy businesswoman and people underestimate her and you remind me of her. It wasn't like, you remind me of my daughter, I want to fuck you. Like, it was not like that. Mm-hmm. Which would have, obviously, that makes a better story because that's how the press has twisted it all these years. But no, I actually thought it was a genuine compliment at the time. I really do. And then he said, I have an idea. And he gets up. And he starts pacing. And he was, I don't even, do they still do Celebrity Apprentice? I don't know. But obviously Celebrity Apprentice was a big thing at the time. And he's like, I think you should have you heard of my show? Have you seen my show? I was like, I haven't seen it, but I obviously know what it is. Who doesn't know what it is? And he's like, you should come on that. And I argue with him. I was like, there's no way that NBC is going to let a porn star on TV. Like, that's not a thing. Like, I get asked to do these mainstream movies or these projects, and it doesn't matter how gung-ho or the producer or the director or even the investors are sometimes, or how perfect I am for the role or the part or whatever it may be. Higher ups always have an issue. No one has balls big enough to put me on TV. And that's when I saw him go, challenge my balls. He's like, I get a wild card every season where I get to pick someone of my choice and it can't be vetoed. If I fight for this, would you be willing to be that wild card? And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. And he's like, no, you don't understand. He's like, it would be so scandalous. He's like, he was all about like PR stunts at the time. It was around the time he was going to shave his head, which he was never going to do. We know that. When he was doing the thing with Vince McMahon, and that's, kind of was his whole shtick back then, was just to do these outrageous cameos and things for PR stunts. And he looked at it as a PR stunt, and then he would get to say like, oh, I broke down the barriers I got her on. And for me, he's like, this could be your opportunity to show people that you're not just blonde hair and big tits, and that porn stars aren't stupid, and that you don't do this because you're too dumb to do anything else. And if you really want to be a director, because we had talked about me being a director and that I really wanted to direct music videos and horror movies and things like that. And I'd already started directing features for Wicket. And he was like, oh, this can kind of, if I put you on TV and I kind of break the ice, maybe someone can step up. And I was like, okay, let's assume that somehow you have this magical wild card and you get me on. I'm going to get voted off first because it's just going to happen. And then doesn't really help me. You know what I mean? And he was like, no. And he openly discussed throwing Celebrity Apprentice for me by telling me he's like, I can't guarantee you'll win. And I was like, that's almost just as shady. I'm not trying to do that. He goes, no, but we can brief you and get you ready, and you'll know what the challenges are so you can be prepared. And really, he's like, you're going to come off great.
Cheating, basically.
Basically, yes, cheating. And I still thought he was full of shit, that there was just no way to get it done. But I stand by the fact, and trust me, it pains my fucking soul to say anything remotely nice about this person. But I think he was being honest. I mean, I really do. I think he thought he had a great idea. I think he saw an opportunity for a PR stunt. I think he was genuinely impressed and fond of me. And I think that the second I also challenged him that he couldn't do it, then his ego got involved. And we all know what happens when his ego gets involved. So I do believe that it was a genuine conversation. I really do.